PPR Podcast number 102 is about to begin. My name is Paul Rudy. The undisputed star of the show is Burt Grossman, who also represents the San Diego Strike Force, the title sponsor of our podcast. Oh, Burt,
yes,
we have an A-lister in the hot seat.
We do. Brian Woods, well, you know him as USFL President previously, now Prep Super League founder, which everybody in town is talking about here. How are you, Brian?
Hey, Brian.
Doing well. How you guys doing?
Well, I'll tell you what, this raised a lot of eyebrows on our horizon. We do a big high school football show that runs obviously during the fall, but now the thought of it would be a super league of prep football talent competing in the spring. Can you explain your idea and how it came to be?
I think, look, there was a lot of voids that we were trying to fill. And one was, if you look at all the other major sports out there, there's a travel and club option for all of them, whether it be basketball, baseball, softball and the like. And so we wanted to create something that would serve as a supplemental platform to traditional high school football. That was number one. So we wanted to fill a void in that area. Secondly, the landscape for the all coveted college football scholarship has gotten very competitive. And that has been a direct result of the transfer portal. So as more colleges elect to go into the transfer portal and sign a more experienced player, then you've seen a number, 400 to 500 over the last 2 years, fewer scholarships being offered to high school seniors. So for us, it was about trying to showcase not only the very top talent out there, but trying to bring in maybe a 2 or 3 star player, put them with good coaching, and maybe make them, develop them into a 4 or 5 star player. So first and foremost, this should be viewed as a complementary entity to traditional high school football, but we feel like we've created a supplemental platform at the right time, just given the current landscape. Furthermore, obviously, as you know, NIL is front and center right now. And so having a national league, especially in states where NIL is currently afforded to the high school student athlete, having a league that offers additional exposure and opportunity to kind of increase one's personal brand is certainly going to be beneficial to a high school player that's looking to monetize their NIL.
Can I just follow up real quickly? So would these kids be even compensated playing in the spring?
No. I want to clarify here that NIL is a mechanism available to student athletes in certain states that allow it. And so all I'm saying is that, no, this is not a pay-for-play league. And this is no different than a college using their donor-led collectives as kind of an above-board way to recruit players. But certainly our league offers players a bigger platform for exposure.
A branding opportunity.
Completely a better branding opportunity, and therefore provides them with that opportunity to come in and earn more than maybe what a traditional NIL deal could bring to the table.
I understand.
You got it?
Yeah.
So, Brian, I want to get your thought on this, because, what I see is some of the concerns I hear should be the least of the concerns. One would be the wear and tear on kids. You go through a 15-week high school season. There's still guys taking people to the ground. There's still guys doing two-a-days, live scrimmages. Is this going to be more of like a mini camp kind of thing, more instructional, where there really is no wear and tear besides maybe a little bit in the game, but it's more of a 7-on-7?
Well, you're playing more games.
You're playing more games, but it's just games. I think the wear and tear comes in the practices. No.
Right,
there is some collisions.
Let Brian answer. Brian, moms and dads that are concerned about, obviously, concussions are a big deal in CTE, and everyone's talking about we should be playing fewer games, having less contact, not more.
Yeah, and I would agree with that sentiment. And I have been at the forefront for quite some time, trying to even in my own state, make sure that there's legislation passed where, kids under 12 aren't playing contact football. So I'm a big proponent in bringing safety to the game. Even my past background with the Spring League and the USFL, we modified the kickoff format, tried to make the game safer. What I would tell you is our practices will look in part like an NFL minicamp or NFL regular season practices. There will be enough contact to maximize the instruction, but it's not going to be a typical high school practice where I would take the position that if you go down to some states that do have spring football, they're bringing guys down to the ground on almost every play. It is an abbreviated season in that it's only 6 weeks. There is a long enough period of time that has elapsed from when a player's high school fall season would end and when our season would take place. We're also doing everything we can to make sure that we're looking out for the best interest of the athlete. We've brought on one of the top sports medicine firms in the country in terms of advising us with medical protocols. We are looking at, an NCAA rules game throughout the league, but we're also looking to make some modifications to kind of enhance player safety. And that could, in fact, include a running clock. So, the wear and tear argument, while valid, again, our practices are going to be a minimal contact, really more about teaching and instructing. And if a player does get injured, it would be in a game. But to your point, one thing that's I think should be looked at here is that, let's say you have a star player, and this could be an example of a player in California. Let's say you have a star player that's coming off a really good junior year, wants to come into the Prep Super League because either A, they want to take an NIL deal and they feel like it'll be more valuable participating in a league that's going to give them national exposure, but B, they've got the offers that they want at that point. So if a player was to come in our league and effectively make the spring of his junior year, his senior season, and he was in fact to get injured, he would still have a full year to recuperate because all the top players want to come out. It's no different than a college player saying, I want to come out my junior year and make myself eligible for the NFL draft. But the star high school player now, they want to come out in December. So if a player was to participate in our league and get injured, they would still have a full year to recuperate, focus on academics in the summer and the fall, and be in a position to contribute to their college program in the January the following year.
Depending on the injury, of course.
No, you're talking about I'm not a medical doctor, but you're talking about a full year. So the injury would have to be quite severe to keep a player out for more than a year at that point.
The folks that I would think are most up in arms about this would be the 7-on-7 folks, right? Because you're going to be going after the same athletes. Can a kid be in your league and play 7-on-7 at the same time?
Yeah, I think that the timing of it is critical on several fronts. One, look, the main evaluation period for NCAA programs is going to happen every year between April and through the end of May. So it's no coincidence that that's the time of year when we're going to play our games. I don't expect college coaches to necessarily be there in attendance, but obviously that's the time of year when they're recruiting, they're making offers. So we wanted to give players and make them visible, at that time. In terms of 7-on-7, while I see it as a valuable off-season, program for skilled players, you're still missing critical elements. You're not seeing a defensive line and an offensive line. Right. So in fact, a quarterback's not seeing a live pass rush. So my position would be, let's say you have a kid who played behind an All-American or a better quarterback in the previous fall season. If I was a high school football coach, I'd want to get him into an environment like this where he's going to see competitive talent. He's going to see a live pass rush. He's going to get more repetitions, and he's going to probably be in a better position to help out his high school football program in the fall. So while I admire, the 7-on-7 and I see it for what it's worth, at the end of the day, it's not football, or it's not the game in an actual football context. And I think more Division I programs would much rather evaluate guys off 11-on-11 tape than see them in a 7-on-7 environment.
Yeah, I think we're missing. I mean, I don't know if you know who that baby Gronk is, the one that does. We're getting a whole new generation of these kids on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it was, and they just want their brand. They don't want to play for a single high school. It's all about their brand now. Well, do you see? I guess the one question is spring a pilot to be fall eventually, or is this always going to be spring?
Look, I wouldn't leave anything out. I think that there's endless possibilities with what we're creating, but I think first and foremost, our primary function with this was to, create a national league. That's something that's never been done before with traditional high school football. So I think right now where we plan to play our games in the spring is ideal for us. Certainly a fall component to this could be something on the horizon, but I think right now the spring is an ideal time because, again, we're not looking to come in and take the star players away from the traditional high school programs. And in fact, we're trying to supplement that where we can.
But if you move to fall, you would be.
Well, certainly. Yeah. But I mean, again, I think that's a conversation for another day. I think right now our focus is really on the springtime, and we feel like that's the best time of year for us to operate.
All great ideas need money. Who's the money behind this idea?
Look, I would tell you that we are well capitalized. We've had some really good people step up and contribute. Probably our lead investors, George Barrios, Michelle Wilson. They are also right now the co-founders of ISO's Capital Management. have been the lead investors on this, and they're well-respected individuals. They know the sports world. There's also been some other individuals that have held high-level positions, executive functioning type positions in professional sports leagues that have also contributed, that wish to remain anonymous at this time. But it's a well-founded operation, and we're in a good spot right now.
And we're not, I mean, I know we're talking about high school kids, but we're also talking about maybe like developmental middle schools, almost like the soccer academies kind of thing.
That's right. So every program, every market that we establish is also going to have a middle school talent pool. So what we're looking to do with those middle school kids, they wouldn't travel, they wouldn't have the same experience as our quote unquote varsity team, but they would have an opportunity 3 or 4 days a week to work with our varsity level coaches, kind of expose them to higher level instruction, and see if we can't bring some of these guys along. So look, there's only around 16 states out there that have spring football for the high school player, but in terms of middle school, there's no middle school spring football programs out there. So we feel like this is an opportunity again to work with younger players and see if we can bring them along a little quicker.
And part of it, I think, I mean, people don't take in, I mean, if you're casual and you're reading this, you're thinking, I played 20 years ago, blah, blah, blah. The recruiting now is just the opportunities for a high school kid because of the transfer portal are just maybe slash 50%. A lot of those kids you see leave after a year. I mean, it's not the same. I mean, they're not ready for it anymore. Does this help them get ready a little more?
I think so. I think, look, the other thing is outside of the NIL component, where I think brands would love the opportunity to start working with talented athletes, much sooner than their college years. I also feel like the college game has become the new NFL. I mean, if you look at what's happening right now with the consolidation of the power conferences, I'm referring specifically to the SEC and the Big Ten. I don't refer to them as college football anymore. That to me is the new NFL. And I would tell you that at some point, those two conferences collectively are probably going to be around 40 teams. And the NFL is going to give a lot of their scouting and evaluation. They're going to put most of their focus on those conferences. So if I'm in a group of 5 school, and it's going to be hard for those schools in terms of continuity. They don't have the big donor-led collectives that the major conferences have. And so I feel like there will be a siphoning of talent from those conferences. And certainly the bigger conferences that are going to get more preference from, NFL and other professional leagues, it would certainly benefit a player to be exposed to the college rules game, to get that supplemental instruction, be in a better position when they step on campus.
How did San Diego get picked?
It was really strategic on our part. What we're looking for are markets that routinely, not just from a collegiate standpoint, but also on opening day rosters in the NFL, year in and year out, produce the most amount of talent. So the obvious markets are Houston, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and to some extent maybe Dallas and Tampa. But year in and year out, those markets usually are 1 and 2 respectively. But then when you look around the rest of the country, California, Texas, and Florida as a whole, produce the majority of Division I talent. And in terms of California, Southern California puts out an abundance of talent as well. And we felt like the San Diego area shouldn't be overlooked as part of Southern California. And there's a lot of really good high school talent in that area. So we felt good about making that a market. And we're not going to operate out of every state. Certain states have never had a 5-star, let alone maybe a 4-star player. So, those kind of states we might not operate in. But in terms of California, we feel good about our presence there. And we also feel like, it was a market that deserved to have a team in this league.
Is there another county in the nation that has 4 Heisman Trophy winners?
I don't know, but that's a good point. And I guess my other point would be, so how do you balance it out? Because I'm going to be honest, San Diego, we have 4 Heisman Trophy winners. We have a lot of skill positions and a lot of quarterbacks, but what do you do when you have to go play Dallas Carter, somebody that has a lot of linemen and it just doesn't match up? I mean, we have a lot of speed and skill. Florida and Texas do. We don't have the same linemen they have.
Yeah, I think, look, the end of the day, I think what you're looking to do is bring in the very best talent that you can. And to me, that means if we can get in our year 1 of operations, if we can have 10 to 15 4 or 5-star players on each team, I think you can build a supporting cast around them. And that includes offensive linemen. And I think this is also where the middle school identification program comes in, because it's not just in our league and it's not development leagues or every other professional league out there, but specifically the offensive line position is always the hardest to recruit. It's always the hardest to identify. I think the NFL is very smart in their approach sometimes, looking for, former college tight ends, putting weight on them, converting them. And I think even their international development program is kind of a mechanism now to identify that bigger body, see if he's fairly athletic, and then the hope is to develop them. So I think that's what we're going to try to do. We are certainly very much aware of the scarcity that is the offensive lineman in this country. And so we are really looking at our middle school program as a way to kind of identify those sort of bodies and develop them. So, and that's in every market. So we do recognize that there is somewhat of an imbalance, but we still feel good about San Diego and being able to put a supporting cast around the star players.
So I apologize for my inability to grasp. This is going to be for sophomores, juniors, and seniors to be. The outgoing seniors, who are they eligible to play, or are they not going to want to play because they've already gotten their scholarship opportunity and they're not going to want to risk getting hurt in the spring?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. And I think, listen, you described the targeted player precisely. So you are following quite well here. But the outgoing graduating senior, if you will, there will be those kind of players that come into this league. And I would say we would probably look at those on a case-by-case basis, because ultimately our target, our wheelhouse, if you will, really is going to be the rising senior and the rising junior. So the sophomore that's competing in the Prep Super League that has not even entered their junior year yet. But even from an NCAA recruitment standpoint, used to be you couldn't contact a junior or a rising junior, if you will, until September of their junior year. And they have since changed that. Now you can have contact with them in the month of June. So everything's moving up, even in terms of the contact periods. So we'll look at that graduating senior on a case-by-case basis. I think the instances where it makes sense might be a situation where either A, he was overlooked as a junior, had some sort of academic or injury issue, and maybe that same issue followed him into his senior year. So maybe he missed it for an injury or got injured early in his senior year, or it's an academic issue. But again, I don't look for that specific player to make the bulk of our roster, a very small amount of our roster. Yeah.
All right, I understand.
You got it out? Nice. That was quick.
All right, let me ask you stupid questions. Insurance. I would see that as being a big issue as far as insuring these kids if they're going to be playing tackle football in the spring out of the high school program. Do I have that right?
Yeah. No, insurance is always a concern, just like safety is a concern. And so we got to make sure we have our ducks in a row, so they say, or so they speak of. We have a broker that we've been working with for quite some time now. They have secured a very good policy for us. And so all of our players will be covered. Most players, as you know, will come in with traditional health insurance, and the insurance that we're going to provide, no different than the traditional high school, is going to be supplemental, catastrophic. So if anything serious happens, we'll be in a position to cover.
Who's been the biggest pushback by this so far? Has it been 707 Lee? I mean, a lot of people talk about the federations here at CIF. They can't do anything. I don't know if people know that, but they're not going to be able to stop anything. Is it these college camps that are money grabs and just, pretend like they camp invite and pay all this money and take a few pictures and send a kid home and he never gets an offer or anything else? Who's the biggest pushback from?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's what I would say too. I mean, I think a state like California, and I believe this is correct, so this might be something worth researching, but even in the state of California, I believe that a student athlete participating in a CIF recognized school can still take part in club sports even while their school-sponsored sports season is happening. I believe that's a policy. I think that's how it is in most states. In some states, you can't compete during your school-sponsored season, but they allow you to participate in supplemental sports, and it doesn't affect your eligibility. In terms of where we sit with all the state associations, obviously, look, we're going to operate independently. That's not to say we're going to be the Wild West. Quite the contrary. I think we're actually going to be well organized, and we're going to be looking out for the best interest of the student athlete that participates. But ultimately, I think we're in a really good spot. I think the feedback has been very positive. If there has been any sort of pushback, I think it's come from maybe a handful of state athletic associations, as you pointed out, and of course, anyone who makes their livelihood from the game of school-sponsored football will certainly might feel a little threatened. I don't blame them for that, but I would also tell you that I think a lot of these people that have come out very quickly and have been outspoken, and I think I count that on one hand, there really hasn't been a lot of people that have done this. I think most of it's been met with a lot of support. They're coming at it from a place where they just don't know enough. And I think they're looking at us like, hey, we're going to take this player and that player is never coming back to my program. And I think once they understand that we're there to supplement and not compete with them or operate in an antagonistic fashion, I think most of the high school coaches will certainly come around. And we, over the next several months, our work is really cut out on that front. So we do plan to have outreach to a lot of different people and mechanisms to speak to state associations, to network with some of the high school coaches. And quite frankly, there's been a lot of high school coaches that have reached out directly to me and said, hey, how can I get involved? I'd love to coach in this league. So I don't think it's all been met in a negative fashion, but we certainly want to let these coaches know we're here to support them.
Well, that's follow up on that. I mean, who's going to we talk about the players. Where are the coaches going to come from?
Yeah, so I think this is what's unique about our league is that if I was establishing any other entity, or if it was the NFL or college football, you're looking at a big commitment. I mean, and the recruiting season with the NFL, it's free agency, but it's a long calendar year. In this situation, we're really only looking for an 8-week commitment, not only from our players, but also our coaches. From a qualification standpoint, we are having very productive conversations right now with coaches that were former NCAA head coaches, former NFL head coaches. I think ideally I'd like to get a lot of guys on staff that have college experience and have been head coaches at the NCAA Division I level. I want them to be exposed to the college game. I want them to receive that level of instruction and be familiar with the kind of schemes they're going to see when they play college, football. So we will be naming some of these gentlemen here in the next couple of weeks. We're excited about the coaching staffs that we've assembled.
What the league is going to be called?
Prep Super League.
Prep Super League. Burt, if you were going to launch the Prep Super League and one of your cities was going to be San Diego and you wanted to get the word out and you wanted high school people to see and learn more about your product, what show would you advertise and perhaps sponsor a segment on? I'm spitballing here. What if you were in the hot seat right now and
is this your sales pitch?
If you were advising Brian as to, hey, this is a way to get your identity out in San Diego, what would you tell him?
I would tell him the PPR. Well, we're the only option, really.
Yeah, I know.
There's us, and then there's.
I'm assuming he can afford it, but that's for we'll table that for another time, Brian. So you're sitting across from a mom and dad who's considering having their kid participate in your league. Make your pitch. Sell it to them.
I think it's a multitude of fronts. If you're a developmental player, look, what we're trying to do. Instead of making you 1 in a million, which is about the number that participates in traditional high school football each year, we're going to make you 1 in 600. You're going to get access to really good coaching. You're going to play a national schedule. You're going to be in a competitive environment. And ultimately, you're going to get more exposure. So if you're looking to secure that scholarship, or in many instances, you have a scholarship offer, but it's coming from maybe a lower level Division I program. And these kids all know that these days. The kids that end up at I hate to point out certain schools, but the kids that end up at a Louisiana Tech or an Alabama Birmingham or something of that nature, if they're good, they will not be there for more than a semester. They will end up in the transfer portal. They will have some donor-led collective from a Power 5 conference come after them. But as I mentioned, these kids all want to start. They know now. They go on these websites and they see, this is my NIL value if I attend school A versus my NIL value if I attend school B. So even a kid who has a multitude of scholarship offers, they might not have them from the programs they want or the ones they feel like are going to maximize their earning potential. I know it sounds weird to say earning potential for an 18-year-old, but it's the reality in the world that we live in right now. So I think from a developmental player standpoint, those are the selling points. If I'm a star player, my NIL value is going to increase significantly by, again, participating in a league at a national level. Not to mention the fact that if I'm in a state that currently doesn't allow NIL, Georgia, Florida, these are big states in terms of the amount of talent they produce. Quick sidebar, Georgia puts out more talent each year per capita than any state. And most people don't know that. Louisiana has NIL, so that might not be the best example in this instance. But the 2 states I just referred to, Florida and Georgia, you come in the Prep Super League, you can take an NIL deal. You can if you continue to participate in your school-sponsored high school program. Now, again, These are instances where the parents and the student athlete are going to have to make the decision that's in the best interest of their own situation. But this is an environment that the Prep Super League can offer them, and that is, in fact, the star player.
Brian, you alluded to the fact that kids are growing up faster, or that's how I interpret your responses here, that, hey, it's not me making this happen. This is just the reality of the world in 2023. Is there any part of you that regrets that I don't know, I guess, because I'm the oldest guy in this conversation, I hearken back to a simpler time when, you played your 8 games in the fall, then did other
Sell
things.
your wares after. What are you talking about?
Do you ever have a moment of quiet reflection thinking, man, this is what it is, but it's a shame it's come to this?
Hey, look, I think if you were to ask me 5 years ago, if I saw a day coming where college athletes could earn 6- and 7-figure deals as a college football athlete, I would be very pessimistic. Obviously, the landscape has changed, and it's changing very quickly. So the way I look at it is either you could accept it or you can try to resist it. And I think accepting is probably the best path forward for most right now, because it has been legalized in the majority of states, or in a good number of states for high school athletes. They're trying to get federal legislation passed right now so they can put all the colleges on a even playing ground. But certainly it is not much of a struggle for me, because I see myself as a player advocate. So I think if one state allows a kid to monetize their NIL, then a student athlete in a state that doesn't offer it shouldn't be forced with, is my family going to pick up and leave and move to another state because I'm worth X, and I can't realize that amount unless I go to a state that allows my NIL. So I think for all intents and purposes, we do see ourselves as kind of the player advocate. We want to help the player. We want to support the player. No different than when Herschel Walker back in the early 80s had an opportunity to play in the USFL. And at the time, as you know, the NFL wasn't taking underclassmen.
Right.
So, his stance was, why is it that I can't, monetize my abilities when they can do it in basketball, they can do it in baseball? And the argument was always, they're just not physically ready. Well, look, there's been some instances, and not too many years ago, Adrian Peterson. I would take the position that Adrian Peterson could have played NFL right out of high school. So there are men among boys, and there are certainly players developing quicker, than in years past. So I think it's definitely a rapidly changing landscape, but one that we've embraced, and one that I think we've created a vehicle for student athletes, especially in states that don't allow NIL, to utilize.
And again, it's not. I don't. It's happened in every. I mean, people don't like the change, obviously, because we're older.
It's happening in every sport.
It's been happening in every sport forever, except the most popular sport. I mean, it was just a matter of time. I'm surprised it took this long.
Well,
I'm surprised too. Yeah, I'm surprised too. I would just tell you too, adding on that point, no one's been able to give me an answer to that yet. No one's been able. I'm speaking in DC on Friday at a big seminar, I'm going to pose the question again. Why is it that every sport has a traveler club option except for football. 11-on-11 American football? Somebody tell me. And you can't tell me, well, school-sponsored football solves all that problems. I think anybody nowadays, most parents, the average spend for most parents is somewhere in the ballpark of $8,000 to $12,000 a year per child on travel and club sports. And guess what it's for? It's not for their own personal development. It's more about pursuing that all coveted athletic scholarship. And so football should be given, and student athletes that want to make their main discipline football should be given that opportunity as well.
I wonder, I think back to Drew Westling when you're talking about, he doesn't think pursuit of a scholarship should be the end-all be-all for high school athletics, no matter the sport. But
that's a philosophy.
Well, we'll save that, Brian.
Realistic.
We'll save that for part 2 of our conversation. I know your schedule's far busier. Where can people find you on social media and find out more about the league on social media?
Yeah, so we're at Prep Super League on Twitter, Instagram. We have a Facebook page, and we're at www.prepsuperleague.com if they're looking for our website, and our social media channels are included on our main page as well.
And we should mention that these games will be streamed, so people will be able to watch these contests, correct?
Let me explain to you. We're going to be announcing our media here in the coming weeks. We are building our own direct-to-consumer platform. It should be ready by the end of September. But the technology that you're going to see in these games is nothing that anyone has ever witnessed before. even in high school. So imagine watching a football game, being able to pick your camera angle and being able to focus on one player. Imagine in-game real-time stats, tracking the ball, tracking the movement of the players, positioning, all of that. So the technology component to this is really big, and it's also going to add extra elements of NIL monetization opportunities to student athletes that they wouldn't get, again, in a traditional format. So we're very excited about the media. We're going to be rolling it out here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, get a hold of me if you want to advertise on the #1 high school football show in the land.
You're selling today, wow.
Well, I'm just saying.
You got it.
I mean, a lot of eyeballs will. I mean, we could be the difference between making it and breaking it, Brian.
Well, I need you guys on my team then, apparently.
Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you, Brian.
Very informative conversation. We wish you success, sir.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Podcast 102 is over, folks. Turn off the machines.